Hey guys, Scripture here with another video, and I wanted to just talk briefly here about George Lucas yet again, and there's just a lot of opinions and thoughts about how much George really cares that he sold, and a lot of it has to do with this new piece that came out in the Wall Street Journal where he's talking about it, and there's all these people that are saying he never cared, or he did care, or I don't know, there's just a lot of opinions. And I think it's just something to talk about because I think we can go through sort of the process of him selling and to where he is now and come to a pretty reasonable conclusion. It's not an all or nothing. He just didn't care, or he still is just crying himself to sleep at night. Like there's a medium in there that makes a lot more sense, I think. So we all know he sold Lucasfilm for $4.1 billion or whatever back in 2012. Handing over everything from Industrial Light and Magic to Skywalker Sound as part of the deal. Since then, Disney has released a sequel trilogy. We all know that. A bunch of crappy shows, crappy sequel trilogy. Now he's opening a museum he spent nearly $1 billion putting together. The Lucas Museum of Narrative Art is set to open in LA in 2026 and showcase a collection Lucas has been working on for 60 years. Okay. While it does have the likes of the N1 Starfighter that debuted in the 90s, 1999's Phantom Menace, only one inaugural exhibit will feature the designs of Star Wars vehicles. It's one gallery out of 33, and I did it grudgingly. I didn't want people to come to the museum and say, "Where's Star Wars?" Why? If you didn't want it in there, why? You don't have to put it in there. You see what I mean? So he's still he's still connected to the fans, and he still wants to give them stuff, and so he begrudgingly. But the thing is, like, if he's doing it begrudgingly, I don't want him to do it. I don't know about you guys, but just don't do it then. If you didn't want to put it in there and you felt like you had to because of Star Wars fans, are you saying that less people will visit your museum if there's no Star Wars stuff in it? Because otherwise, why do you care, George? You're a billionaire. See what I mean? There's questions here that I ask. I try to analyze it because it's like, if you didn't want to put it in there, then just don't put it in there. But then it's like, oh, I didn't want people to say, "Where's the Star Wars?" But if it's not in there, no one's going to expect it to be there. Does that make sense? Guys, am I crazy here? Like, I mean, people are going to find out what's in it really early on, like as soon as it opens. So just if you don't put it in there, then it's not in there unless you're putting it in there because you know that's going to drive more bodies into the building. That's the way I look at it. That just makes sense to me, right? Because he doesn't have to put that in there, but he did anyway. I mean, I'm glad he did. From that, it'd be neat to see that. But I'm just saying, if he didn't want to, he shouldn't have. So Wall Street Journal then asked Lucas if he has let go of his instinct to manage Star Wars now, 13 years later after selling it. Disney took it over and they gave it their vision. That's what happens. He replied, "Of course I moved past it. I mean, I've got a life. I'm building a museum. A museum is harder than making movies." And I think he has moved past it, at least to the degree that from the creative process, he's just moved on now. But let's not forget, when The Force Awakens first came out, he was very, very sad. And he had some very choice words. We all remember the Charlie Rose interview, the white slavers, they've wrecked it.
They decided they didn't want to use those stories. They decided they were going to go do their own thing, and so I decided, fine. But basically, I'm not going to try to... They weren't that keen to have me involved anyway, but at the same time I said, I'm not going to... If I get in there, I'm just going to cause trouble, because they're not going to do what I want them to do. So, and I don't have the control to do that anymore, and all I would do is muck everything up. So I said, okay, I will go my way, and I'll let them go their way. I sold them to the white slavers that take these things, and
They didn't take any of my ideas, blah, 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 blah. He was not pleased with the direction that Star Wars had gone with the sequels. And over time, I think he's just said, I've done enough. Like, I don't need to, I can't keep caring and worrying about this, right? We saw a few years ago when they were filming The Mandalorian, he came on set and he was holding Grogu. And then people will tweet, oh, that means he loves it. I just think he's going over there at that point. He's being friendly. He's saying hi to John and Dave. And he's being friendly, and what's he gonna do? Start pick up Grogu and slam him on the ground and stomp the puppet? I mean, don't get me wrong, that'd be really funny. I'd love to see that. But what's he supposed to do? He sold it. It's years after he sold it. It is what it is. And I think at that point he's like, okay, I'm just not part of this, but I still want to come and say hi and be friendly and, whatever. And he's the primary shareholder, individual shareholder of Disney. So I mean, I just don't I don't think he's just holding grudges forever, right? I mean, and let's face it, selling it made him an extraordinarily wealthy man. He was already very wealthy. Then he became, one of the top 3,000 people on Earth wealthy. It sounds like Lucas has indeed moved on from Star Wars, but fans often lament Disney's stewardship of the franchise since Lucas sold it. Certainly, Star Wars has its ups and downs since Disney took over. Solo for example, was a costly failure. Rise of Skywalker sparked a backlash from fans we haven't seen in a new movie since. Well, and now we know it either lost money or at the most made $50 million. A literal Star Wars episodic movie made at the absolute maximum $50 million. And I had some people question me on that. I think some people watch like the first few minutes of a video, but then they don't get the details. Theaters take half the money, guys. So if it made $1 billion, it actually made $500 million. It might have made a bit more. Some theaters take a little less than that. Some take 40% or 30%. But no matter how you gauge it, it couldn't have made more than 50. That's the absolute maximum. On the TV side of things, while the likes of The Mandalorian and Andor enjoyed critical acclaim, The Book of Boba Fett, blah, blah, blah. The critical acclaim is not the issue. The issue is they don't make any money off of them. They're not making money off of them. Like Andor, they spent, I think they spent like $600 million on that show. They didn't make any money off of that. Come on. Mandalorian made the money because when it first came out, it drove traffic to Disney Plus in a major way the first season and even the second season. But since then, none of the streamings have really done anything for them except suck money out of them. Last year, Lucas suggested Star Wars' new bosses got a lot wrong in the sequels. I was the one who really knew what Star Wars was, who actually knew this world because there's a lot to it. The Force, for example, nobody understood the Force. When they started other ones after I sold the company, a lot of the ideas were in the original, sort of got lost. But that's the way it is. You give it up, you give it up. Yeah, and I think that's part of what he was mad about. I really suspect that because when he did that Charlie Rose interview and he was really ticked off, at that point, The Force Awakens was finished, so he would have known what happened in that movie, and they were starting to work on The Last Jedi. So I don't know how much he knew about The Last Jedi. I'm sure he knew something, because his idea did have Luke on an island. I just think it was for a different reason, and probably for not as long of a period of time. So I think he probably knew quite a bit of what was going on there too, but at the very least, he definitely knew about The Force Awakens and knew that Rey was just doing stuff. Just doing mind tricks, just using the Force, doing all these things. So I love that he says this. The Force, for example, nobody understood the Force. Which, what's funny about that? It's really not that hard to understand. That's what's so crazy to me. Like, fans know. We all knew. He's not the only one. He's the only one maybe in Hollywood. But how did these guys not get that? Like, how did J.J. Abrams not get that from watching the original movies? Or even the prequels? It's not like people are just running around willy-nilly using the Force. Like, there's a training, there's understanding of it, there's identifying it, there's so many different things, right? That's why that stupid Force healing lady in Andor is so stupid too. Gilroy doesn't understand the Force either. And he had nothing to do with the Force the whole thing and then threw her in there. Just don't even use the Force at all then, dude. Really dumb to me. But anyways, yeah, I think we can draw a reasonable conclusion from those comments, coupled with the Charlie Rose interview, that one of the things that really bugged George was the fact that they screwed up the Force with Rey. I think that's a fair assessment. I think that's, we don't know 100% because he didn't exactly say that, but he pretty much says that. One other thing I'll say about this too is that how could you not know, right? It feels like they just didn't care. And that also falls on Kennedy. Kennedy knew about the original films. She knew about the prequels. She knew about the Force. Anyone who watched those movies, that's all you needed to watch, right? You didn't need to read any books or encyclopedias or do any research. Literally just watch those movies and you'll have a very clear idea right away. You don't need any other things. And so she would have known that. So I think it's not that they didn't know or understand the Force. I think he's being very diplomatic in that answer. It's that they didn't care and wanted to make Rey the most powerful thing in the history of things. And once they did that, that opened the door for everybody to get carried away. Filoni and Favreau got way carried away with Grogu. He's way too powerful. It's really stupid. They got carried away with Force ghosts interacting with the physical world and somehow helping Rey defeat Palpatine, but we don't really know how. They're just talking. They just got completely carried away. Rey's Force powers opened the door for a lot of insanely stupid things in Star Wars. But let's check what people are saying on Twitter, because this is why I did the video, because there's a lot of these funny comments, people getting all excited. So this guy says that this is the exact moment George Lucas moved on from Star Wars. Well, it wasn't, though. It wasn't, though. We know that because he was upset at what they had done. He's over it now. I mean, it's years later. He's got other things he's doing. He's not like sitting around obsessing over it. But he was upset with what they did. He hadn't moved on. There's interviews, there's quotes, there's all types of things we can go to. So that's not correct. George Lucas sold Star Wars mostly because he wanted to spend more time with his family, but also in part because the fandom turned on him after the prequels were released. Let's not create revisionist history just because you don't like the new Star Wars content. Okay, so he did say that part of it was his family, although I think most of his kids were adults, or quite old by 2013. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think he might have had one other one or something that was younger, but anyways. He also said he wanted to make his own movies at his own studio at the Skywalker Ranch.
You know, I made the decision to sell the company with Star Wars. I made that decision because I looked at the future. I looked at the fact that I was going to have a baby. I looked at the fact that I was married. And I looked at the fact that I wanted to build a museum. And I looked at the fact that I wanted to make experimental films. I was also stepping away a little bit and turning things over to Kathy Kennedy.
He didn't want to do Star Wars movies anymore. He said, I want to do my own movies. Okay, he did say that, 100%. And then he also said in the past that people turned on him. Most of that was the media. Like the vast majority of that was the media. One of the revisionist histories with a lot of people that love Disney Star Wars and try to attack people that hate it is they'll say, oh, well, you guys made Jake Lloyd suicidal and you guys made Ahmed Best, you ruined his life and all this stuff. And then Ahmed Best comes out with a tweet. He's like, it was the media. It had nothing to do with the fans. Jake Lloyd's mom comes out with an interview. Yeah, it wasn't the fans. And he has a mental disorder. So she's revising that, right? It wasn't fans. The only fans was that people versus George Lucas. That was it. It was literally like a bunch of nerds that made this video. Other than that, it was literally the media. That's confirmed. Look it up. Everybody knows that. So let's not get carried away. So all that to say, there were multiple reasons why he sold. He also said a fourth reason, right? So you've got time with family, wanting to do his own movies, the way the critics handled him, and I guess a few fans. And then on top of it, he said, I was 70 years old and it would take me 10 years to do another trilogy.
There's 3 more stories. And I knew that was going to probably take, to do it right would take about 10 years. And I said, I'm 70. I don't know whether I'll be here when I'm 80.
So was an old man who didn't want to have to spend 10 years making a trilogy. So it's a multifaceted thing. And this is what I was saying from the very beginning of this video. People sort of want to lump everything into one side or the other. I've had discussions with people about the EU that it's like George supported everything in the EU and then the people, he hated everything in the EU. And it's like, guys, George is a very nuanced person. He's obviously very complex, and he's obviously not somebody who's just going to blurt out everything he feels about everything. He's pretty careful, and so that's why we're here kind of stringing together things. So this sort of all or nothing take when it comes to George Lucas, I'll never understand that with people. How can you... This is in response to George saying Disney took it over and gave it their vision. That's what happens. Of course, I've moved past it. How can you just move past something you created in love? I don't get that mentality. He didn't just move past. As I've been saying, it's been a gradual thing. He's at the point now where he's saying, of course I've moved past it. It's been 13 years. But he had many things to say over the years. But eventually, it's not that you just... It was a difficult thing for him to move past, but what's he supposed to do? What are you supposed to do about it? What are you supposed to do about it? Just fall into depression? Like, he has said his 6 movies are his Star Wars, and he's fine with that. Does that mean he's just moved past and it's no biggie what they did? Of course not. But what's he supposed to do? The guy's in his 80s. Like, sit around and be depressed all day because Disney? And because Kathleen Kennedy and his friend Filoni stab him in the back? I wouldn't, especially at that age, and especially if I had that much money. I'd just be like, you know what? It's my 6 movies. Moving on. That's what I would do too. I wouldn't say they gave it their vision. They had no vision. Yeah, that's been confirmed. They had no plan or vision for anything. This is a safe answer. He owns a ton of stock. What is he supposed to say? Disney sucks. I want it back. Well, and that's another layer of complication for this, is how much is he, if he is still kind of ticked off, how much is he going to say when he owns so much stock? So, I do believe he's moved on now. But he also owns a lot of stock, so he's moved on, but he still wants to make money off of the stock, right? You left your baby in the hands of imbeciles. Yeah, but those imbeciles did a good job of convincing him they weren't going to be imbeciles. They really, truly did. You see some of those old interviews with Kathleen Kennedy and how the whole thing is George's vision. And
there's huge opportunity, given the tremendous success that Disney's had with Marvel and with Pixar, and now adding Lucasfilm to that. I think we couldn't be at a better home. It's the best company possible to take Star Wars into the future.
I sort of moved that treasure trove of stories and various things to Kathy, and I have complete confidence that she's going to take them and make great movies.
The main thing is to protect these characters, make sure that they still continue to live in the way that you created them.
Filoni, George's vision, and Iger, George's vision, and they never had any intention at all of doing anything that George wanted. So, but yeah, no, I mean, they definitely did not respect what he wanted at all, but they convinced him they were going to. For $4.05 billion, I'd move past it too. Well, and that's just it. It's not like he sold it for $10 or was forced to sell it. He sold it, and I mean, money can cure a lot of what ails you in terms of stress and stuff. For legal reasons, I'm required to say this. George, after making these statements, shouldn't have sold, but $4 billion is $4 billion. In short, he said they ruined it. I mean, he knows they ruined it, but he has to get over it. What's he supposed to do? Like literally, what is he supposed to do? Probably pretty easy to move on when it no longer resembles what he created. And that's part of it too. That's a very good comment, because it's one thing when they first started coming out with stuff and he was super disappointed and you're like, oh. But when it's been 13 years of dog poo, eventually you just, it's not even what you created. And in this interview here, when he's talking to the junior high school kids, that's essentially what he says. Some people are pretty bitter at Lucas for selling. More like he cashed out and let Disney turn his mythology into an assembly line. Having a life must be easy when you're swimming in $4 billion. I've moved past it, says man, still answering questions about it. Well, but he's answering questions. He's not making statements. People are asking him about it. They're going to ask him about Star Wars till the day he dies, folks. That's the way it is. Disney took it over and gave it their vision. It's a nice way of saying they took my life's work and ruined it. It's the moment he moved on. Again, no, that isn't. He took the money and left Star Wars in the rearview mirror. Boy, people are really angry at him. I'm not mad at George for selling, man. He's an old guy. What's he supposed to do? I don't know. I'm not mad at him for selling at all. Because again, those people were lying and saying they were going to fulfill his vision and they were going to be very careful and really care about it. And they didn't. They didn't give a single crap about it. It was just hey, we'll slap a Star Wars logo on a turd and everyone's going to buy it. And that's what they thought was going to happen. That it was easy money. And it turns out it wasn't that easy money, but that's what they thought they were doing. It was just a strictly money thing, but they convinced him that they were really going to take care of it. So again, the bitterness towards George, I think, is misplaced. The Force may be with you, but I'm not. Man, really, Jedi mind tricked his way out of the whole franchise. He ruined it well before Disney got their hands on it. That guy does not like the prequels. I think fans let Lucas down, and that's why he was able to sell it so easily. I don't think anybody could fathom what would happen to literally everything. What does that mean? That's why he was able to sell it so easily. He was 70 years old, and it's $4 billion, dude. I don't think it's getting too old for this sort of thing. Neglecting to set any lore rules when selling the franchise was not only the single biggest mistake he ever made, but more disastrous than every other bad decision he ever made combined. Well, and he, again, in the previous article, he does reference, as we saw, that they didn't understand the Force, which is a major lore issue that people have with Disney Star Wars. I don't know how you put that in a contract. I don't know how you would word that. I guess it's possible. But I don't think Disney would have bought it, right? Because they didn't care about the lore, right? They wouldn't have bought it if that was an issue. So again, rather than putting it on paper, they said, oh yeah, George, don't worry. We're going to make sure. We're going to take care. But they had no intention to. It was just a money grab for them. So, I mean, I guess he could have put it in the contract, but these were his friends, guys. Like, you have to understand, Bob Iger was his friend. Kathy Kennedy was a really good friend of his. So was Dave Filoni. These people were really good friends of his. And then once they got a hold of what he created, then they just took it and did what they wanted with it, right? And didn't think or care what he wanted anymore. Honestly, Lucas saying, I've got a life as peak humility and peace with letting go. Yeah, you have to at this point. Creators handing off their legacy is always tricky, but it's refreshing to see him genuinely move on instead of bitter. Everyone deserves to enjoy their own life beyond their work. Let's finish with this, guys. Okay, so let's say he didn't sell. And he made his sequel trilogy, and it was fairly well received. Like, let's say it was sort of in between the OT and prequels in terms of reception, so it was fairly well received. At the time it comes out. And then he's 80. He's now 80. He's done the sequels. Well, now he's 80, right? So now he decides to sell. And there's very few suitors. Disney's one of them. They buy it. They run it into the ground. Same way they did. Are we still saying he's a terrible guy for selling at 80? Okay, let's say he doesn't sell. Let's say it falls into the hands of his family. They take it in the will, right? Well, there's no guarantee that they do the right thing either. If you look at Lord of the Rings, look what has happened. After Chris died, after Tolkien's son died, the grandkids are just a bunch of idiots. They're just letting Amazon do whatever. They're selling off all different aspects of it because they just want money. They don't care. They don't care. They just want money. So there's no guarantee of any of this. So I think inevitably, as George got old, there were going to be more people involved or other companies involved, and he wouldn't be involved. I think eventually it was going to go into the toilet no matter what, based on that. I really do. Unless by some miracle, let's say he held on to it, hands it off to his kids, and his kids somehow find the right people to make more Star Wars content. And not just people that are just, flippant with it. But that's the question. Would they hold on to the rights and let other people make Star Wars under their supervision, or would they be like, oh, well, Disney's offering us, even more than $4 billion at that point, right? If George has already done the sequels and stuff, now maybe it's worth $6 or $7 billion. Are they gonna hold on to it and oversee more Star Wars content being made and making sure that it's part of what their dad would want, or are they gonna go like, hey, that's $7 billion. I had no involvement in these movies. I wasn't even alive, so do I really care? You see what I'm saying? These are complex things. So I think, let me know in the comment section what you think, but I think inevitably things were going to go down badly for Star Wars, and that sucks. It sucks, but I think it was inevitable. So blaming George for selling or getting mad or trying to make it a black and white issue when it's clearly gray, there's clearly multiple reasons why he sold. It wasn't just one thing or the other. He's a human being. People make decisions based on lots of stuff. Not just one little thing, or this other thing over here, or the fans, or the this, or the that. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Do you think it was inevitable that Star Wars would go down the poop chute eventually anyway, or do you disagree? Do you think it could have been awesome? Or are you still kind of upset that he didn't hold on to it and at least do the sequel so we could say there's a proper his 9 movies are done and that's proper? Whatever it is you want to say, let me know in the comment section. If you like this content, please like, subscribe. It always helps the channel. Feel free to check out anything else on my channel. Have yourselves a really good day.